thank you to our colleagues from St. Paul's and University of Rwanda for joining us today. Our presenter today is Gurpreet Rana. She is the Global Health Informationist here at Taubman Health Sciences Library. And I was teasing her just before this that this is a Preet classic. Preet here is the person to go to when you have a question about where you can find sources on a variety of topics. And she's an expert in knowing which sources are the right fit and how you can actually search and navigate them to ensure that they're relevant for your particular research projects. I'm very happy that she agreed to do this for us.
I often use these data sources to better understand the area of OB-GYN, midwifery, family planning, global health. So these are not only data sources you'd use in research, but ones you'd use for your own learning. So today, this is the plan today. This is not a skills-based webinar. If you were with us at the last webinar I led you through, we were looking at skills in searching the biomedical literature. That was really skills-based. Today, I'm going to just share some of the sources that either intrigue me or ones that I would encourage you to use. These are not all of the data sources that are out there, of course, but these are ones that I wanted to highlight for you. We're also going to look at data visualization tools and data sources. And sometimes when you're looking at data visualization tools and data sources, you almost can't tell which is a visualization tool and which is a data source, because so many data sources now do include a visualization piece to it. Another thing is I have packed this presentation very tightly. We may not get through it all. That being said, you are going to get all the slides with links and practice questions. And I would encourage you to do independent study with the slides. I always like to have a little bit more than a little bit less for us to cover. So one thing that we went over in our last webinar was the idea of matching information resource to information need, a real basis of evidence-based information seeking and use of research sources. What you see in the background here is not going to be a surprise to you. These are the icons for the Sustainable Development Goals. And the reason I put them up here is there are so many different sources that meet the information needs of all of these areas, but there's also a cross-disciplinary aspect to them. So for instance, good health and well-being, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, these all stand on their own, but at the same time, they all have to do with family planning. They all have to do with women's health. So everything that I'm going to show you today is linked off of the CERT Research Guide. And the resource guide, you'll see the link there. And what I am showing you right now is the data sources section of it. So if you see on the left-hand side, there's a tab that says data sources. And so what you see are some of the selected data sources I have picked out that I think would be intriguing for your use. We're not going over all of these. We're just going to go through some of them. And I thought because it's really engaging, I'm going to see if I can go live and not use slides. I have slides just to make things faster, but we're going to go through some of these questions and sources online live if we can. And I wanted to start with the data visualization tools. One of my favorite quotes comes from a statistical textbook. I'm rather sad that it comes from a statistics textbook because I don't like statistics. I did have to learn it in school. I forgot it all, but Dr. McKeety helps us with that. So the quote is, "The greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see." And when we look at data, sometimes a table won't tell us as much as a mapping of that data onto a global map or a regional map, or looking at it from different points of view. So those data visualization tools have a lot of specific interests for us. So there are so many tools, and I've just chosen a few select ones to go through. The first one is a very general one, but of course, these very general sources are still relevant to us in research and family planning and in CAC. Reason being is, as we're conducting research, writing papers, we do want to make sure that we have some references. We have the idea of what is the, for example, maternal mortality ratios, or what is the reported estimate of maternal hemorrhage or sepsis, or information that is going to be relevant to us as we connect it back to aspects of women's health and family planning. The first one is one that you may have used. So some of you may have used these sources. These are not uncommon. So if you have, please connect with your colleagues and be peer mentors for one another. The first one is Global Burden of Disease, and then you'll see some subject-specific ones. A really new one is Maternal Mortality Trends. One even newer than that came out last month was the Maternal Health Atlas from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation. EQUIST, which is a child health and women's health data source from UNICEF. Track 20, Family Planning 2020 sources. And one you may have used for abortion data sources or family planning is the Guttmacher Data Center. So let's go ahead and go through this. When I teach, I like to use questions. So I'm going to be teaching from questions. But first, I want to introduce the global burden of disease for you. I'm not going to read this entire paragraph here on what is the global burden of disease, or as we call it, the GBD study. But it is the most comprehensive worldwide observational epidemiological study to date. It looks at national, regional levels, and it goes from 1990 to the present for us to better understand the burden of disease and connections of health issues around that, and socioeconomic issues. So it's a very rich source of data. There are different ways we can see this data set. We can just see the actual data set, download it, work with it in that way for statistical analyses if we want. Another way is for us to actually go into the source itself and do some data visualization. This is the IHME's website, and you'll see the link there where I've provided the link that you can actually access the global burden of disease data. Just to save time, I'm going to use screenshots here, but I can go live if there are any confusion. We're going to be working off of the data visualizations link. So when you're on the page for the global burden of disease, there's a link to data visualization. You'll see that there's also infographics, publications, country profiles on global burden of disease, data resources, training, but we're going to focus on data visualizations today. And you'll see a list of those presented to you. The top one is one we're not going to go into for known reasons. It's the China subnational Millennium Development Goals data. For some reason, I think that might not be relevant to this user population. We're going to take a look at the main data visualization source that's used through the global burden of disease, and that's called GBD Compare. So let me take you through this data visualization. Please remember, this is a tour. This is not the entire thing, and you'll see there's a link right here to the actual source itself. So we're going to go into GBD. And when I go right into the source, the data visualization shows me a specific way to see information. On the left side, you see my settings. These are the first settings you see when you go in. You see display is cause. The measure I'm looking at is dailies, or disability adjusted life years. It's looking at the entire world. For 2017, this is a slider. It can go back to 1990, 2000. You can slide it along. What age groups am I looking at here? all age groups, and for both sexes. And what you see here is what we call a tree map, or a data visualization of the world's GBD. What you see in blue is chronic illness. What you see in pink or red is maternal, nutritional, neonatal, and child disorders. What you see in green is injuries or conflict. So that is the environmental type of falls, road injuries, fire, burns, violence. We're going to focus more on looking at the chronic, but especially the maternal, which is in the pink section. So when we change this, and I'm going to change my settings, I can do that here. I'm going to go ahead and change these settings that I've highlighted, the square and the arrow. What I'm looking at now, I changed it to dailies. I changed it to age 15 to 49, so more of a childbearing age group, and I changed it to female. You'll notice how this has changed. Let me scroll back to the original. This is the world. So what you see here is anything that's a dark color shows a change in proportion from the previous year. The larger it is shows the actual proportion of global burden of disease. And so when we're looking at women, the HIV increases in Rwanda. You'll see depression, anxiety increases, maternal, but also the conflict and terror, and this may have to do with refugee populations entering the country. We're not sure, but that's something we follow up on. What you'll see here on the left side are different ways of seeing the information. I can also compare this to other countries. I can compare this globally as well using some of the tools here. Let's go ahead and look at another visualization of this. This link right here is linking me directly into the actual visualization I've created here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. I created this last night, and what we see here is Rwanda, females 15 to 49, and we're looking at the cause of disease. We'll notice in 2000, HIV was the top for women. Now I can scroll this back and forth to see others. And this is looking at all causes. So that's what I'm looking at right here, all causes. And if you scroll down, you can see all the different levels that we can see of disease cause. So you may want to connect, for instance, cardiovascular disease to aspects of maternal disorders. So we'll notice that the blue, chronic disease, is moving further up since 2000. But what are some of the other traits we'll see? I can change the level of granularity here. So here I can see more of a general, just plain an overview. If I go to a level 2, I'm not going to see the same level of specificity. If I go to level 4, I'll see some of those diseases spelled out more. So as opposed to saying communicable diseases, it'll say malaria. Let's go ahead and take another look at this. I'm going to go back into my slides just to save time. And you can go ahead and click on this link when you do have the slides and see this. I changed this to the cause to maternal disorders instead of all causes. So what I'm seeing now are what are the changes from 2000. One significant change here is maternal hemorrhage has gone down quite a lot. What has gone up? So now the top maternal disorders listed as hypertension. What else do we have here? You'll notice that maternal abortion and miscarriage, and that's induced abortion. I did look up the actual definition of it. It's miscarriage and induced abortion. That's number 7 to number 6. So you'll see how that movement has taken place. What I've done on this particular focus here is I've used a compare setting. And I've changed it to look at Rwanda, but compare maternal disorders to gynecological disease and how they compare. So if I was live, I could see the actual data here. I'm going through this very quickly because I could do an all-day workshop on the global burden of disease data visualizations. Here's a question for you, and this is going to help you and help practice using it. What is the rate of years of life lost due to maternal abortion and miscarriage among women ages 15 to 49 years in Eastern Sub-Saharan countries over time? I can visualize this with GBD Compare. Let's take a quick look. This is something that I've made. I graphed. I'm looking at cause. I changed the cause from all causes to maternal abortion and miscarriage. Instead of looking at disability adjusted life years or prevalence or incidence or others you will see when you investigate this, I'm using years of life lost. I also changed the age to 15 to 49. Female, and instead of using number or percentage, I'm using rate, because that is a better way of comparing one country to another, I believe. I'm looking at 2017. I have not used any of the other settings. And I decided to use the Eastern Sub-Saharan countries, which you can then see here. If you click on the link here, you'll go to the live setting. But what we're looking at here is a screenshot. If I wasn't, and I would be able to scroll along any one of these and see the actual numbers at each point. What I notice here is that both the Ethiopia and Rwanda are at the bottom of this grouping, and that I found really intriguing. So this is something that you can take a look at. And here's another thing. I could go from 1990, use my little slider button and go along until 2017 and see how things change. I could change from rate to percentage. I could change from years of life lost to dailies or incidence or prevalence. And again, this is not a session on the GBD, so I'm going very quickly. Please note at the very bottom of the screen, there's a place where you can take a tour to use the GBD visualizations. So I'm moving forward. And as I told you, I'm introducing each of the tools to you using questions, just to show you the type of questions you might answer. There's much more to these sources, but I really wanted to kind of give you a focus of where you might go to find some information. We're always looking for timely and current maternal mortality ratios and maternal mortality information. One good source for this from a data visualization point of view is the World Health Organization's new maternal mortality levels and trends data visualization based on a recent report that was published about 1 month ago, I'd say. So my question is, I want to create a visualization of maternal mortality ratio over time, comparing countries in South Asia. So here we have it, maternal mortality levels and trends. This is the actual data visualization tool. Along one side, the left side, you can see I can narrow to different countries, specific countries. And then I limited it to the World Bank Organization of South Asian countries. I selected all of them. And then I got this live data visualization. When I'm scrolling along this, if this was live, you would be able to see every single value. Just as I did in the screenshot, I captured, I put my mouse on this very last one and found the one for Afghanistan. What this tells me, of course, and what tells you is that Afghanistan is compared to the rest of the countries and South Asia as a whole, Afghanistan is has a significant issue in regards to maternal mortality ratio. And you notice as well, I can recreate my data visualization by changing the year range. Please realize you can put these data visualizations into papers, into presentations like I have, But please note, you must cite them appropriately, just as you would cite any source from a data set such as this. Now, one thing that's so important, now we took a very quick look at the maternal mortality trends data, but what is so important, we shouldn't just use information and data without knowing how it was collected. We know that this is all estimated data. Not all of the information is collected. How was this collected? So I went into the actual report, and there is the link to the section on methods, data estimation process, the statistical methods, and other data inputs to model. So it's very important when you use data to always know how it was calculated. Let's go on to another news source. One of my favorite news sources is called IHME Maternal Health Atlas, and so much so that I'm actually going to go ahead and go right into it. The question that I have here is, what are the key drivers of maternal deaths in Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Afghanistan, and how do they compare? Let's go ahead and take a quick look at this. This is the maternal mortality, the Maternal Health Atlas. This is from, again, the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, a great source. It gives you a little information about what it actually does. I'm going to go right into the actual tool. The tool is not only a data set, but if you scroll down, it'll start to tell you a story. So as you scroll down, information is added to the site, and you can change and work with some of the data that is presented here. So it's also what we call a data story. I'm not going to scroll down this entire data story, but I'm going to go to the very top. What information do we have here? We can click on and go to the section on trends, key drivers, breakdown, fact sheets, or the actual report itself. Well, since I was looking for key drivers, I'm going to click on key drivers of maternal health. And I'm going to compare 3 countries. I'm going to compare Ethiopia. I'm entering that in. I'm going to compare Rwanda. And because it intrigued me with its numbers being so high, I'm going to look at Afghanistan as well. I'm going to change my years just for the sake of showing you what the system can do. Instead of 1990, 95, I'm going to do 2010 to 2017. What are we looking at here? What we're looking at, and I'm sorry, it's taking a moment to scroll down here. What are the driving factors? First of all, it tells you a little more about what they mean by key drivers. So what are aspects that can impact maternal mortality? So in this graphic is a live shot, and you can, again, use pieces of this, and you can see for Rwanda, there's been a 21.8% decrease of age-specific maternal mortality ratio impact. What are some of the more impactful ones is population growth. You'll also see fertility changing, and you can compare these. You may want to compare other countries as well. I'm not showing you the entire aspect of the trends and the breakdown and fact sheets. I'd like you to do some investigation on those as well. I'm going back to my presentation. So I'm just going through these screenshots I have. Many of you have used Track 20, and so this may be a review for you. But one question I have here, and this is the type of question you might answer through Track 20. There's so many great very specific family planning conceptual information sources here. My question is, what are the projected trends for MCPR for Ghana in 2020? And also, this is important, how is it calculated? We don't use numbers without understanding what's behind them. So going into Track 20, this is part of Family Planning 2020 project. But it goes more into the actual data analysis portion of it, the monitoring and the statistics. This is the first page of it. I went into this section on data and analyses. And then from here, I chose the particular country I wanted to look at. I wanted to look at Ghana. And here, this is a screenshot, but again, if it wasn't, I could track all along here and see the measures. I can see the modern contraception method mix here for Ghana. You'll see I can see general information, core indicators, indicator graphs, and other resources. Here I have both married women and all women. Those are the measures that are taken. You can also see a little more about the data collection. I'm going to go to my next slide where we're actually looking at the data sources. So here it says indicator number 2, contraception prevalence rate modern methods, MCPR, all women. Going to the next, I see the calculation for that. I don't understand it, but I see it. And I know that many of you understand it better than I do. So, you know, statistics and I never became friends. But it's important to understand, and if you are asked the question, to at the very least direct people to how the information was estimated or where it came from. Here I'm looking at Sub-Saharan Africa. And I want to map unmet need for contraception, but I want to see it from education and marital status. Another question I might have that could be answered using Guttmacher is the estimated abortion rate in Eastern Sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm using Eastern because I think that's relevant to our user population. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Guttmacher data. Now I'm going to tell you some of the overt abortion data is really available through very few sources, and Guttmacher is one of those for international, regional, US level as well. What I'm looking at here is I'm looking at I decided to just select all countries, and wherever you see a little, what do you call it, upside down raindrop? That's what I call it. You're going to be able to map that. If you see something that looks like a grid, that means you can see it as a table. You can see some of these as both. Move this out of the way here. I chose unmet need for contraception. You can see the different ways I can see that if this would get out of the way. But you can see here that maybe you can't see it because this is in the way. But it does say education and marital status, that I can map that. So what I did was, it did show the entire world. I used the little plus sign to bring it closer into Eastern Sub-Saharan Africa. Again, this is a screenshot. I could take my mouse and mouse over all of these. Here are some of the measures. So the one I chose was the second one, percentage of married women aged 15 to 49 with unmet needs among those with less than 7 years of schooling. And you'll see the difference there. So you can compare and contrast these. So I put my mouse over Ethiopia, it was 28%. Underneath that, you'll see the source of this data is a report from the Guttmacher Institute. It is data from 2014, just so you know. You'll also notice that you can download the data set. On the right side, underneath the measures, you can see how you can download it to an Excel spreadsheet and do your own analysis or work with it. Moving very, very quickly. Moving forward here, I'm going to Eastern Africa as a sub-region of Africa. I've decided to look at not only, wanted to look at abortion rate, but then I also was interested, maybe I'll look at percentage of pregnancies ending in abortion too. So I chose both of those. And then I went ahead and clicked on table, and here's my table. So you can see there's the uncertainty interval, you can see the source of the data, and any of the other data information sources. So here, again, from a study conducted, it was published in 2016. It's data for 2014, but it's the most recent I was able to find. Number of abortions per 1,000 in Eastern Africa from 2010 to 2014. We have the numbers being, it's a rate per 1,000 being 34. Percent of pregnancies ending in abortion 2010 to 2014, 14%. So again, I encourage you to read the source to better understand the data that you're seeing. But it's a very quick way to develop and present a table. So here's a new source that I've just started to investigate called EQUIST. EQUIST stands for Equitable Impact Sensitive Tool. And there's a lot we can do with this. I will tell you that I'm just starting to investigate it, so I have not fully seen what it can do. What I will tell you is the best way to really understand a data source is to go in with some time and to just investigate, look at all the buttons and all the different tools and to play with them. So I decided to I wanted to visualize cause of socio-cultural acceptability of contraception. And this is what's really interesting about EQUIST. We can look at regional level data. I also want to see what is the cause of maternal mortality by Rwandan provinces. So those are two separate questions. Let's go ahead and look at some screenshots that I did last night going into EQUIST. I have to show you the first one because it's too important. It's probably my favorite screen of the entire database. I actually put this on my computer screen when I'm feeling sad, and I just look at it because it's so special. So this is EQUIST. It's from UNICEF. So you'll also find child health data in here, preventive services, that type of thing. The data I'm looking at here, you'll see the data set I chose through the navigation side. On the left side is Ethiopia 2016. It's a situational analysis. I'm looking at the analysis. There's a drop-down menu for the different themes and indicators. I'm looking at contraceptive use. The determinant could be geographical accessibility. It could be actually ratio, but here I'm looking at sociocultural acceptability, and I wanted to see regional information. So I went to the subnational level. That's what was available to me. So I'm looking at this, and again, you can see how it's calculated. I'm not going to go over that here, but you can see it's calculated at the top. You can save it as an image or a PDF to drop into a presentation. At the very bottom, I see the source is the Demographic Health Survey, but it's not the fact that I can get the source somewhere else. It's the fact that it's visualized for me. So what I'm looking at the national average for Ethiopia is 20%, but you can see the difference between Addis Ababa and Afar, or the Somali region. So you can see how those percentages are changing. And again, you can click on them. I have this in what we call a chart view. If I clicked on map view, it would show me a map of Ethiopia with the different regions and the different numbers on those as well as a live data visualization that I could highlight and click on and change. So let's answer the second question. The second question was for Rwanda, and you'll notice that information comes from the Demographic Health Survey 2014-15. It was the most recent available, and it's looking at maternal mortality by cause, by province. I decided to look at the rate, the deaths per 100,000, as opposed to the number. You'll notice that the maternal mortality by cause during that period of time, or taken at that time through the household survey, is we see antepartum hemorrhage. And by the way, again, I can highlight on any one of these and see the actual numbers and move along. What we see in blue is dark blue is complicated abortion. I just wanted to point that out. But we also see what we call direct and indirect causes. To better understand what that means, we would go to the actual DHS, the Demographic Health Survey. Also, at the very bottom, you see it says last updated 28 March 2019. Currency is very important. So I can tell you I'm not familiar with all the provinces of Rwanda, but I know that you are, many of you are, so you can see how they might compare and contrast. There's not a significant difference across the board, really, but it's really quite intriguing to see that. Let's go ahead and here, by the way, is a link I'm giving you, which gives you more information on Equist, how the information is derived and calculated. You'll also note that Equist is open source information, and that's really important to know as well. So we've looked at just a few data visualization tools, and I know I'm going very quickly. This is what I'm considering to be a very quick tour. Again, I'm going to repeat that I encourage you to go in and do independent study, or another thing that I like to do is get a partner and throw out different questions, different data questions, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt to find the answers. So some of the ones that I'm going to go over is some of the general ones and just a few subject-specific ones. One thing, again, to review is we still need these general health data sources in context when we're looking at FP and CAC research and learning. We need to know the Global Health Observatory data sets. We need to know how the World Bank open data can help us. We also want to be aware of some of the other subject-specific content. So here's one, now tuberculosis profile. Maybe you want to know the TB profile for South Africa. And I'm just choosing different countries just to mix it up. So if I click on the WHO data information source, it goes to the main page. One thing you'll notice right here, it's showing you different data sources. So here it's showing me I can go into a data portal on women, children's, and adolescent health. I'm going to scroll down the page. And if I scroll down the page, I see various themes for the data in the Global Health Observatory data system. And these are categorized by themes according to the Sustainable Development Goals. So you'll see Universal Health Coverage Data Portal. That's one that I find to be very, very helpful. Tuberculosis is the one that we're looking at. So you'll see that under communicable disease. So I went ahead and clicked on that. So here is the source of information. You'll notice we can always go into the data repository. There's for the Global Health Observatory data, you'll always see a navigation bar for data repository, reports, country statistics, standards. I'm going to go into the TB data itself. This is the TB country profiles. So I can see them and see how they might impact women and women's health. Country reported. I can see how they connect to the Sustainable Development Goals and incidents. And I can also see financing and diagnosis and treatment for TB prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. I'm looking at South Africa. I can see it as a PDF or a web page, different languages. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I pulled up. This is a portion of the profile for South Africa. And you can see it provides everything in there from universal health coverage to the TB notifications in 2018 to the estimate burden of tuberculosis and the rate of the population. And along the right side, these are not quite data visualizations because you cannot really highlight them and do different things with them, but they are graphed images of the TB profile. Something else I want to show you, and this I'm still in the Global Health Observatory data system, is here I can see by theme. Again, that is by Sustainable Development Goals, category, indicators, country data. And what I decided to do was click on indicators to show you the level of data you can go to. Look at only the A section. This is not even half of the A section. This is alcohol abstinence. Age limits on premise service, advertising restriction on social media. These are all health topics, A to Z. Z being the correct way to say the last letter of the alphabet. Canadians, Rwandans, and Ethiopians know this. Americans do not. So that being said, take a look at the various indicators and see, just familiarize yourself with the country information sources. Familiarize yourself with indicators that might be relevant to you. I'm going to go into this one live. What is the adolescent fertility rate? And I went to Ghana just because it was an example I had over time. How does it compare globally? How does it compare regionally? Let's take a look at the World Bank open data. Some of you may be quite familiar with the data sources here. It is an extensive data source. As you can see, it says free and open access to global development data. One thing I really appreciate is they have this blog on using some of their data and the impact it shows. So the blog can be quite intriguing if you're interested in looking at the use of data. Here's some more information about new ways of looking at poverty, and that is in regards to the SDG goal of ending poverty. You can see different resources. There's a data catalog, an extensive data catalog. Microdata, that is in-country level data. So microdata would be household surveys for Ethiopia, or governmental surveys that might be done in Rwanda, etc. We're going to look at, we can also look at country or indicators. And I'll show you the indicators in a moment, but I want to go ahead and look at adolescent fertility rate. As I type, you'll notice the system starts to offer me some options of indicators that it might think I'm interested in. So I was interested in adolescent fertility rate. It came up for birth per 1,000 women aged 15 to 19. I'm going to go ahead and choose that. When I choose that, a data visualization comes up for the world. Remember, I'm not interested in the world. I wanted to see Ghana, so I'm going to go ahead and choose Ghana. Slowly typing. As I do, I get the link I want. So now I'm looking at it from Ghana. But this information means nothing unless I can compare it. So we're going to, again, this is a line graph from 1960 to 2017. I can do a bar graph if I want to just do 1 year. Mapping will take me to the entire world, so I'm not going to do that. The next piece I'm going to do is I'm going to compare it to the world. Remember, I was looking at it globally. So here is adolescent fertility rate is higher in Ghana than the world in general, globally in general. But then I also, of course, want to see it compared regionally. So I started typing sub, and it's giving me some options here. Definitely don't want fixed telephone subscriptions. I do want sub-Saharan Africa location. And I'm just including all sub-Saharan countries. So here we have, Ghana falls somewhere in the middle between the world, but I can also take a look at other countries. What does this also show me? Also show allows me to look at aggregates, information from the same region, similar values. I'm going to click on same region. What's going to happen, and I don't know if it shows up very well here, but I can see the individual countries from that region in gray. And that gives me more context. Now, again, very important, where did this information come from? I'm going to go to my details section. So it tells me exactly where it came from. It came from the United Nations Population Division. What is the definition of adolescent fertility rate? What was the statistical concept and methodology? And if I want, I can click on all metadata to get more information on the estimation and work. It is, we can see Creative Commons data. Now, in addition to that, it's showing me, hey, you're interested in adolescent fertility rate? Here's some other, other kind of interesting sources related to that you might want to check out. So you can see and it even provides the trend lines right beside it. let's take a look at indicators in general. I'm going to close this up here. I want you just to see what indicators are available. I'm going to go to all indicators. And usually you would do a search of the indicators, you would not scroll through them. But when you're first understanding what's available here, it could be helpful. So looking at what are the gender information, this comes from a database called Gender Equality Data and Statistics. You could go directly to that database, or you could use it within the actual World Bank open data source. Then you see under that, I'm scrolling very quickly, you can see health, poverty. So all of these, education. Of course, that's not a measure of family planning, but it's very important to family planning. So these are the type of things that you're going to want to see. Where can I find that information? What is educational attainment, the doctoral or equivalent for the female population? Is that even available for some countries or not? So looking at these different ones can be really, really helpful. I'm going to actually go into one more that I find very I'm going to do infant mortality rate. And this is one I use a lot with my students as an example. Haiti, infant mortality rate. Well, hey, let me change this. So it's so you can see it a little better. So you can see I can change the timeline of the graphing. I changed it to 1989 to 2018. What happened here? I use this with my students to show how a data visualization or a data tool can show the impact. If I had seen this as a number, it might not mean as much to my students as seeing it like this. We know what happened here. And Daniel, would you like to tell us?
Earthquake.
Earthquake, that's correct. 2010. So you see that is a significant change. And what I do with my students is I show this to them and I ask them either tell me what happened or research it and then tell me what happened. So that's a really interesting idea of taking students through the data and actually asking them to show you the impact that it's made. Here are just the screenshots of what I just showed you. Then there's also abortion policies. Let's take a look at some of the global abortion policies database. And I believe this is up to date. However, I was presenting it at a global Sexual and Reproductive Health Institute last year, and Daniel was in the room, and he told me the information was not up to date on Rwanda.
Rwanda had just changed, yeah.
Rwanda had just changed.
I'm sure it's up to date by now.
Okay, let's hope. So if I was to look regionally, maybe a question I might ask is, I'd like to compare abortion policies in Ethiopia and Rwanda. And then maybe I want a world view. I also want to map countries where authorization of a health professional is required for access to abortion. Again, I could go live, but just to save some time, so because we just have, I think, until 9 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and go through some screenshots. So this is this is a policies database, but it still is significant data. It's a tool to data visualize and to also look at the data for abortion policies. So what do we see here? I'm going to increase the size so you can see this in a little more detail. What we have here is I went to a filter and I'm looking at, I chose the countries Ethiopia and Rwanda. I didn't go to regions, I just chose those. And here you can see I can choose different filters. So there's, I can choose filters at the women's request, filters for legal ground and gestational limit. I chose economic and social reasons, fetal impairment, mental, physical health. There are others. Under the heading additional requirements for access to safe abortion, I just chose authorization of health professionals. And I also looked at authorization and license facilities. I'm just choosing ones here. And then for service delivery, I use methods allowed. and where can abortion services be provided. And the last one, I looked at conscientious objection. So public sector providers, private sector providers, public facilities, private facilities, and the rest. Also, I said, please include maternal mortality ratios for these two countries. That's number 3. Number 4 is advance filters. Do you want to see the human rights treaties signed? I said, sure, yes. Do you want to see concluding observations? Okay. Do you want to see penalties? Sure, I'll see penalties for any illegal action. And then I clicked on search. And what I'm looking at here is just the one section for legal ground of gestational limit. And I can compare and contrast that. So here for fetal impairment, I see Ethiopia. I put my mouse over it and it said the gestational limit is 28. When I put my mouse over Rwanda, it was not indicated. You'll notice I can download the data. I can download the data from all countries. And remember, I did not choose all of the indicators I could have. I just wanted to choose these. I clicked on the link here, fetal impairment for Ethiopia, and it gives me more information. The Ethiopian Criminal Code. What does gestational limit mean? And by the way, that the criminal code I'm not sure if that's the most recent update. That's what the World Health Organization had. And then there's the WHO guideline for safe abortion guidelines. And what does that mean there? I'm just going to finish here where I'm doing a mapping of authorization of health professionals. You'll see, and I'm just going very, very quickly. Abortion at women's request, just to give you an idea of the values that are here. The next section, the different values that are under legal ground and gestational abortion. Additional requirements for safe abortion. Again, I increased the size of that so you could see what's there. You can see some of the service delivery aspects. And then the conscientious objection information, which I highlighted there. And then again, looking at policies. And again, it's really about investigating these. I'm going to go ahead and skip over this last question because I'm just going to allow you to investigate that on your own. But I'm going to this very last slide because it's very important. This is the most important slide of our presentation. It's a comic from the New Yorker. It says, Miss Peterson, may I go home? I can't assimilate any more data today. So I'm done. I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I know I showed you a lot of information in a short period of time. What I'm encouraging you to do is to go over the slides again, to use those questions as practice questions, to work on them yourself, compare them to the screenshots. Think about other data that you might want to find and look at those. Look at the CERT resource data page and see other data sources as well. Kathleen.
Well, thank you very much, Preet. We had 9 people who participated.
Great.
Some of them have left, I think, because we're just a little bit over. But we wanted to open it up to questions for those of you still on the call. But I know that's a lot of information at once. Do you have any questions about specific resources or ones that you would like to go over quickly?
I'm happy to go over any one of these. While you're doing that, I'm just going to pull up the CERT guide. If you have data sources that I don't have here, but you would encourage me to include, please email me. So here's the data sources page I was working through, and you'll see a lot of you see Equist here, you'll see IHME, and some that I also did not cover.
Is the abortion policies database, where is that?
Yes, it is.
Which one is that?
So I put most of this alphabetically. So it's at the very bottom because it's the WHO.
Oh, there it is.
It's an alphabetical list,
Got it.
yes.
WHO Global Abortion.
Yes. So, and then just some chosen visualizations. But as I said, it's very hard these days when we look at data sources like this to make that differentiation between what specifically is a data source and what's a data visualization. They're starting to merge and put aspects of data visualization in a lot of different sources.
Mm-hmm.
I have a separate one here for global burden of disease, which gives you some of the data sets and information there and the very specific tools. And under the data sources section, you can go specifically to a subset for data sources for Ethiopia. And you can see just a few that I've chosen and pulled out, not very many, but the DHS, Ministry of Health, the Ethiopian e-service. And if I click on Rwanda as a subset of the data source section, you'll see some of the sources of information, including the Rwanda Health Observatory and the DHS and other sources that could be helpful from the Rwanda perspective. I think it was a bit much, but I had this 1 hour with you and I wanted to use it.
Yeah.